What's up, bros? Welcome to another Brograph tutorial. I'm Dave Koss, and I'm really excited today because this is going to be our first Nuke tutorial. My friend Joe Selnikovic has had quite a bit of experience in Nuke, and so he's going to come in and he's going to talk to us about Nuke a little bit and show us how to make an HDRI unwrap. And this is like from beginning to end. This is the whole thing. Now, there's one thing that I have to say at the beginning of this, which is this is not a beginner to Nuke tutorial. So keep that in mind, because he's going to talk about nodes and all sorts of stuff that even I'm having a hard time following, but I'm getting there. And so we're really hoping to get Joe to do some more tutorials that are like intro to Nuke. But we figured for this one, we were going to kind of jump right into it. And we're going to go through the entire process of setting up a ball and taking pictures of it, doing an unwrap, getting it all set up in Nuke, and then he's going to hand it back over to me, and I'm going to show what you can do with it in Cinema 4D. This is a lot more accurate than the HDRI tutorial I did with Photosynth a while back, because the Photosynth one, it was very rough. The iPhone was pasting the pictures together, and it wasn't like a true HDR photo, and it wasn't high res. And so this is like a better way to do it. This is if you're really going to light with an HDRI, or you're going to use reflections HDRI, you're going to have some really crisp looking reflections. That's what this is about. So without further ado, let's go ahead and hand it over to Joe.
So today, quick and easy, we're both in between projects here, but we wanted to get this knocked out for you guys. We've been talking about it for a long time. This is a great intro to Nuke. I want to get you guys some more classes and get some more introductory and some experience stuff, show you some tips and tricks in it. But this is a good introduction to it here. And today, we're just going to step outside and get a little shot inside this gazebo outside Dave's friendly abode here. So I thought this was a good example because it's a little different lighting setup. If you wanted to put an object in here, you're getting indirect lighting from the sides and not necessarily from the top. You're getting a lot of spill, a lot of green spill and red spill from the bricks. And this is a great example to what you'd want to capture in HDRI to relight an object with. It'd be tough to replicate all this lighting in 3D and get it really accurate and comped right. This is the type of situation where an HDR will come in real handy for this type of relighting. So starting off, some of the rigs, some of the equipment you need, I bring out. You're going to have a camera, obviously. Full frame sensor is best. And as far as rigging this thing up, there's some options that you can use for the actual probe itself. If you're just doing relighting, if you're just using it as an environmental HDR lighting map, you've heard of the gazing balls, the mirror balls, or even the Christmas ornaments. That type of stuff would be fine for just lighting an object with, because you're using pretty much blurred reflection, using the color information from the pixels, luminance information from the pixels, and not necessarily the detail in the image. You're just using those pixels to relight your object. So the smaller, budget-friendly, convenient chrome sphere balls work great for that.
Or Photosynth, like the tutorial I did.
Absolutely.
Real kind of a messy HDRI photo, but not great for reflections.
You know, if you're doing the next blockbuster film, you might want to step it up a little bit. But for 80% of what you're doing, that stuff's going to be great. It's going to work great for you. Our setup here that we have it's prepared for that maybe next 10, 15% of quality that you might need. Maybe not 100%, but I found I really like the chrome ball bearings that I've gotten here. It's a 3-inch chrome ball bearing. I could probably find a better grade finish on it, but for what, again, that 90% of what we need, this is working great. You know, you got to figure out a way to rig it up. That was the first thing we had to figure out. This little ball is about 5 pounds, and you want the smallest footprint in that picture that you could possibly get, because you're going to have to paint it all out later. So the quick thing that I came up with here was just I grabbed some piping in a plumbing department, local hardware store, a couple different lengths of pipe to use, and a coupler that went from 1/2 inch to 3/4. And inside the coupler, we stacked up 5 really strong magnets, some of the stronger ones that you can get. And really just using a little rubber washer in between that and the ball holds it in place fairly well. It's going to keep it from blowing off. You're going to be able to move it around. You want to keep your hand on it if you're picking up most of the time you want to take it off the C-stand if you're going to be moving it. But if you're moving it a little bit, you can hold it on there and move it around some without it falling off. Maybe about 15, 30 degrees. Works pretty well, actually. That way you don't have to tap it, drill it, epoxy it, try to figure out another way. So far, it's working well for us.
And the more magnets you put in there, they kind of complement each other. They kind of add to the strength.
Yeah, I started with some cheap magnets and it didn't work as well. And then I had one of the strong magnets with some of the cheap magnets in there, and it worked all right. But when I started stacking up 4 or 5 of those strong magnets is really when I got the most pull out of it. And it really helped out, actually. So nice little tip there. Things to keep with you. You're going to have some silver polish, some bartender's friend, that kind of thing, because these balls do tarnish, at least mine do, this chrome finish. So you want to pull it out and give it a good rub down. Clean your balls well before you shoot, is the moral of that story.
That's what she said.
Exactly. Keep a couple cloths with you because you want to course. You want to kind of lube it up and let it dry so you can polish it off, and then have a secondary cloth to really clean that stuff off. And then I have a third kind of just polishing cloth. A microfiber is what I usually use, just to really give it that final shine, get all the fingerprints off, and hold that on there while you set it onto the C-stand. Now, placement of the ball is important, depending on what you're doing. If you're just gathering lighting maps to use for your 3D objects like we're doing today, kind of set it at the center of the screen so that you can get the sky, the mid-ground, you'll get the low, the ground. But if you know that your 3D, if you're going to have a little matchbox car running along the bottom of that, along those bricks or something down there, you probably want your HDRI down on the ground so that you have those correct lighting, the correct angles of the photons coming in. It'll make a little difference in your comp. It'll look nice. Now, I like this tripod we started using. Dave coined it the Walgreens tripod.
Walgreens special, $25.
Walgreens special, man. Well, yeah, unless you have to buy it as a tourist, right?
Yeah. It was Photoshop, literally, in San Francisco. It's the same one they sell at Walgreens, except it was $100 more.
Ouch.
Yeah, that hurt.
So, but you know what? The nice thing about this tripod, it is a smaller footprint than some of the big Manfrottos or Bogans or any of those other ones you use in there. Now, the problem we had with it today, and it's a good point to bring up, is that it was a little windy for that tripod. We were getting a lot of shake and a lot of vibration in it, so we had to bring out the big guns and lock that camera down. It's really important that you have, first of all, that you have a tripod or you have some way to anchor that camera, because you need those shots to be still and locked in place, because you could be bracketing these and taking multiple exposures, so they all need to line up and stitch together right. So if you're in windy conditions or anytime, you can't just handheld these. You need to lock it down. You need to set it on something if you don't have a tripod, or preferably you need a nice solid base to take these pictures, get everything nice and stable with it. Now, the camera we're using today is a Canon Mark II 5D Mark II, excuse me. Works great for this. Full size sensor. Really makes a difference. So you don't have crop factor on the lens. You want to be on the longest lens you can. We're on a 300 here today because, again, that goes back to your footprint in that image. You want it as small as possible, so the further back you can get and zoom in on that ball, the better. You want to watch your, as far as settings in the camera, you want to watch your depth of field. You don't want it to be too shallow because you need, especially on that long lens, you're going to be all the way down it. So you need to have your eyes, you need to have your f-stop set at a 5, 6, and 8, or maybe even 10, 12. You're going to have to feel it out in there depending on your lens, but you want to make sure that the entire ball is in focus so you don't have any fall off. Now, the bracketing, there's 3 ways to bracket it. There's 3 ways to bracket these images. Obviously, bracketing, for those who don't know, we're going to take a really bright image, essentially, to make sure we get all of the detail in the shadows. We're going to take a mid-range image, and we're going to take a really low, dark image to make sure we get all the detail in the highlights. And then when we meld them all together, you can run through all the luminance ranges. You get detail all the way through it, and you don't get noise or lost clipped highlights. So To get that, we're going to do bracketing on the camera. We're going to take multiple images and we're going to stitch them together once we get all done. Now, in order to achieve that, there's 3 ways to do it. You can adjust your shutter speed, you can adjust your ISO, or you can adjust your f-stop. Now, there's trade-offs with all 3. If you're adjusting your shutter speed, you're going to be trading off motion blur. If you're adjusting your ISO, you're going to be trading off how much noise and grain is in the image. And if you're changing your f-stop, you're going to be changing your depth of field. So really, the shutter speed setting is the most precise that you want to go with. The ISO is going to introduce different levels of grain into the images, and the f-stop is going to change your depth of field in the images. Given the fact that the windy conditions, the remote we have it's not the $300 remote. We have the $100 remote here, and it doesn't have the settings to isolate the shutter speed bracketing. So we're just going to go with the in-camera settings that the 5D offers, which is just fine. We have it set up at plus and minus 2 stops on either side. So the darks, the highlights, we'll get our good dynamic range there with one nice one in the middle. Now we're setting up to shoot this ball. You want to get it from both sides. You want to be able to set up on one side, set your camera height, set the ball, and then leave it the way it is. You want to measure your distance there and try to get a perfect arc around. Now, given the fact that we're on a real-time budget today and we're just trying to demonstrate this, we didn't quite go into that much detail. But I wanted to tell you the right way to do it at least. So set your camera height, measure it out, try to get the same way on the other side. And that way, when you stitch everything together, all the distortion, everything is going to line up a lot better than if you just try to eyeball it. Once we're set up to shoot, you want to take multiple exposures from either side of the image. That way you'll get a clean 360-degree panoramic when you go in and stitch it all together and start painting it back together. One thing we also did not do out there, which I had in my hand, I forgot, is a color chart. It's really handy to have a good color chart, whether it's a full size, this one is small, and it's good to have both, actually, depending, because you never know if you're going to be on a tight macro shot. You really want to be able to pick up those lighting levels on that spot, as opposed to having, it's nice to have the big grid too, so if most of your shots are wide, you can adjust it there. If this object were moving, you'd want to get some light samples from the different areas that it's moving through. It's going to help in post to match those levels to the raw and to the plate. But best place to do this is just drop it on the ground right in front of the ball, or right in front of the C-stand. That way it'll be locked in at the bottom of the photo, be easier to paint out, but it'll be there for everybody who needs it to match color. So a couple notes here on set. If you're on an actual production set here and you got a crew of people around you, directors, DPs, art department, catering, everything. When you're on an actual film set and there's a crew of people around you, you'll find that visual effects, you're limited on your time to get out there and get your shots and get your information that you need. So have everything set up. When you're over in the corner and they're doing their takes, you want to have your ISO set up, your levels, your f-stop. You want to be ready to jump right out there, grab those shots you need, and get back out while they're setting up the next shot. Make good friends with the script supervisors, the ADs and the camera assists, and that way you can get the information easily and be able to work around the set a little easier. So once we have all the images, everything looks good, we've checked it on set, we're going to break it all down, we're going to take it inside and start the post-production. Okay, we're back inside, we've imported all our footage, got everything organized out right, and our first step is going to be in Photoshop. Now, there are a few softwares out there on the market that will do this. A lot of people have access to Photoshop, you do it right in here, and it seems to work as good as any of the others to me. Now, this is step one. Is what we want to do is take those images and we want to merge them together into our HDR, our high dynamic range image. From there, we'll save it out and we'll take it into Nuke, and that's where we'll do our cropping, reformatting, painting, and send it out as a lat long map. So, step one in Photoshop, we're going to go to File, Automate, Merge to HDR Pro. That's going to bring up a little dialog box where we can browse for our files. And we're going to go back here to, let's see, from graphics. No, we want to be in Scratch. Transfer. And we have pre-selected these because we value your time. Brings it in here. We'll hit OK. So Photoshop is going to automate this whole process for you. You see it import and merge these layers together, and then it will bring up this dialog box where you can make some adjustments. Now, if you're in 16-bit mode, you can adjust, you have more settings to adjust the edge glow, tone detail, shadows, the curves. What we're going to be working in 32-bit mode, because really this is all ones and zeros, and 32 bits, you got a lot more information to work with there. We're going to set, if you can set this to automatic, complete toning in Adobe Camera Raw, or you can turn this off and do the tone mapping yourself, and kind of set your mid-level gamma range to where you want to work from. So we'll just find a good little midpoint here. We're not clipping too much, and just say OK. Now we'll want to use these same settings for our reverse angle of our HDR when we merge that together. And once that runs through its process, we have a merged image here. Looks like our preview, and all is good. That's about all we need for Photoshop. So we're going to save this out, and since we were in 32-bit mode, we're going to go back to our folder here, and from graphics, I'm going to save it in the PSD folder, and we will call this exterior VO1. Now we're going to change this. We have a couple different options we can save it as. Now, you may not have the OpenEXR, but it is a free plugin. If you go into openexr.org, you can download that plugin for Photoshop, be able to work in EXRs. The Radiance as well is a .hdr file, and that'll work as well. I'm going to save it as an EXR. We'll just hit save with no compression. All right. Now we'll do the same thing with our reverse angle and then jump into Nuke. So here we are in Nuke. Let's bring in our files. So we have the exterior and exterior reverse. So this is a good example of why you want a smaller footprint, because here we have Dave not standing behind the camera and filming, and also a box we left here on the bench, which we probably should have moved. But hey, that's okay. For demonstration purposes only. Okay, so what we're going to want to do, we'll start with one of these for now. First thing I want to do is create a real roto node, and this is just going to be in the RGB channel. I'm going to create a ellipse. I'm actually going to turn on my format center. Hold down Command, Option, and Shift, and I can get a constrained circle here. And I'm going to bring it in a little bit from the edges, because as you can see, as we get close to the edges, we really start to fall off, get distorted. So I'm going to crop it a little bit in. Up there. Just a little bit bigger. Oops. Okay. We'll go with that. Now what I want to do is change this color to black and invert it. Okay, now we have a black on our outside. So from here, we're going to go ahead and crop it. If I can spell crop. I just want to crop it to the edges of the ball on all sides. Zoom in here and make sure we're looking good. That's good enough. And that'll be fine for demonstration there. Okay. I'm going to go ahead and tell that to reformat just for the heck of it. Reformatted, okay. Now, looking at my frame size here, 2926 by 2926. How about that? That is a perfect square. Normally, when I crop it, it's not a perfect square, at which point I would add a reformat node just to make sure that this is a perfect square. Whether I made probably just 2K would be fine, but I'm going to leave it there since I had it perfect. So from here, we have it nice and cropped down. We have it where we want it. What I want to add is a spherical transform. Now we have an input as our mirror ball. Output is a lat long map. So as you can see, right off the bat, lat long map, it looks good, but we're a little squished. Our lat long map needs to be a 2-to-1 ratio. So our original image here, we're at 2926 by 2926. So really what I want to do is make a new format out that is a 2-to-1. 20, what did it say, 2096?
2096, I think, yeah.
See, I already forgot. 2926.
2926.
So it's 2926 times 2 is 5852. So I'm going to output format. I'm going to make a new one. And we're going to leave our height at, what was that again? Jeez, I can't remember. 2926. Make our width 5852. Okay. Oop, I have to give it a name. We'll call this 5D 2-to-1. Okay, we're at square pixel. So now if we look at our lat long map, our proportions should be right. Now, unfortunately, this node is notoriously slow, so you'll see the refresh starting to slow down on us here. Okay, so now at this point, you could put this out as a map. If you had to do a rough, dirty, light, you could map this onto a sphere and you get a pretty good, you get the pinches on the side and it'd be fine. But what we want is a full 360-degree wrap. So we're going to essentially work this same angle on this here. Now let's see if our roto lines up. That'd be great. Yeah, looks good enough to me. Crop still looks pretty good. Yeah, maybe a little off on the crop there. See, you'll see this is where you start noticing some of the discrepancies in on set, where as far as the height and angle and position. So you do want to make sure and go through each side and custom set it up to make sure that each one is cropped and reformatted and rotoed correctly. Okay. Now that we're cropped right, we are off again on this one. So then we're 2926 by 2930. So normally what I want to do is go with the longer version. We'll add a reformat. So we'll do 2930 by 2930 and just let it distort a little bit. 2930 by 2930. Let's call this. We will call this, what do we want to call this? Our square 5D. Yeah, let's call it square 5D1. Okay. So now we plug that into our lat long map. And we have two good looking lat long maps. So, how do we get them together? Well, there's a couple ways to do that. There's a manual way where you can add roto shapes, offset the transforms, merge them on top of each other, and create a clean mat all the way around. I kind of prefer to do it this way here. What we're going to do first I want to combine the mats, and then we want to paint out all our junk, right? So, I'm going to use this as my base mat. I'm going to add a paint node. Not there. I'm going to add a paint node on this one. And I'm going to plug my background into this image here. Okay. Now, what I could do with this, go back into this spherical transform, is I can rotate this So what I'm going to do is make an intermediate merge for now over these two. And I'm just going to lower the transparency. Actually, I don't know why this is set to 10. I want it at 1. One of our default settings. I've set my mix down a little bit. I'm going to look at this. Now you can see them on top of each other. So what I want to do is I'm going to find a feature here and line these up. And in the spherical transform node itself, I have options to rotate. So if I jump into the Y and rotate this 180 degrees, you see what it's going to do. If I look at the two, it's going to bring our pinch here to the center. It's going to rotate the whole ball around. But my truck now is where my original truck is, pretty close. Now I can kind of dial it in with this merge node. And you want to kind of line this up. So kind of dial it in here as close as we can. You're going to get some distortion that's not going to be, you're not probably never going to get it perfect. But as close as to perfect as you can get. Now, this goes back to our application. If you're going to be using this for a reprojection, not just some geometry, you may want more angles of that ball. You might want to take 4 shots instead of 2 and grab every 90 degrees and then really get detailed and painting it in if you had to do some sort of a mapped VR or Oculus type mapping. You want a really clean 360 degree map. Using this for relighting doesn't have to be that clean. So we're going to get it as close as we can here. And I'm even going to use the other axes here just to line this, because I'm kind of looking at this truck and using that as a point to go by. Okay, so that's pretty well cleaned up. We'll go with that for now. You can refine it more if you want. I'm just going to lose this merge node for the moment. That was just to help us. Look back at my roto paint, and now what I can do is change this from clone to reveal, and that's going to reveal our background layer plugged in. There we go. So now I can go in and paint in some of these details based on the background image and paint out some of this distortion and junk on the sides. Okay, so we're going to go in at a grade node and kind of bring those mid-range up a little bit, have us match a little better. Again, you can fine-tune this as much as you want. It's just a demonstration. So now you can see we tied in, kind of cleaned that up a little bit. We turned this off, got rid of the pinching. And there we go, back on. So now what I'm going to do is take this whole thing, copy it. Really, I kind of like to build from out here. And we're going to go back to our merge setup, A over B, so I can set this other side up. So we're going to jump back into our spherical transform node and reposition this one pretty much the same way we did the first one. Find a point back here and line it back up. Thankfully for time, I have one already set up from another project, which I can drop in here. Get rid of that old one. Get rid of this merge. Add another paint node. And our mask, we want our background. Now we can do the same thing we did on the last side. Go back to our reveal. Size this up a little bit. Start to paint this stuff back in. Now you see we're painting ourselves back in there, but we'll take care of that in just a minute. You want to find some good seams inside the picture to line up to, and I'm not real happy with the way that's going. I'm going to take that off. Just got to leave the seams over here. Just get some of this junk out. Okay. So now you can see we've gotten rid of the pinching and the junk on the sides. Obviously, one thing to keep in mind with all these roto nodes, we want to make sure that they're covered in all frames, even though we're rendering out a single frame. It's a nice way to go, what happened? And you end up moving around a frame when everything is gone. So now that we have that set up, I want to do a little paint. And I'm just going to knock this out real quick. Everybody's got a good idea of what the paint node, having to paint out things, so just get something kind of sloppy on this here. And I'm just going to use my clone brush and bring some of this back in. Oops, not that tree though. Again, we're just fast and dirty here. You guys can take the time to do the detail. But generally working with your background when you're painting works well. So you see kind of moving across these. I don't know what the sign is. I'm going to take it out though. All right. So just quick dirty. You guys can clean it up better when you do it. So that cleans out our spot in the middle. Again, I'll make sure we want to set all these to all frames. Now, we're left with just a couple issues. We're almost done. What I might actually do here, I didn't realize you also want to clean up any of these issues you have with the stitching too. It's a good time to do all that. These issues on the edge, there's a nice little trick to get rid of those. So what we want to do here is we're going to add another spherical transform. And we're going to tell it we're lat long in and lat long out. And we're just going to rotate this. Not there. Rotate it here. Here we go. We rotate this 180 degrees on the y-axis, RY. And that gives us a lot easier place to paint out rather than having to try to paint out these edges. Or it also works too if you get this, you get the end of the ball down here where the mounting is, you get this stretched out all the way across. If you do this spherical transform, it'll put it all into a point right in the center that you just easily paint out and then put it back, it's gone. We're also going to want to make sure that our output format is also a 2:1. There we go. Get that set back up right. Now, if we add another paint node, add a dot. Keep us nice and organized. I like organized scripts. We can go in, use our same old reveal trick. I don't know if I want to go that far into there. Let's see if I can erase that. Didn't work well last time. It's not working well this time. I think that may just be the hardware, but oops. Try that one more time. Again, we're not actually photoreal on this. If we needed to be photoreal, we'd be doing a lot more clean painting. Clean that seam up just a touch there. This junk out of here. And I'm going to leave the box in there just for good measure. Okay, so now we've got that painted out. Add another spherical transform. Rotate it -180 on the Y, not the Z. Make sure we're lat long in lat long out with a 2-to-1 ratio. Make sure I was on the right one there. All right, and now if we look at our before and after, real easy way just to clean up those edges, especially when you have that whole rig down at the bottom of this screen. Just to be able to, at that point, you would change it on the Z-axis. And this one here, you would change it on the Z-axis instead of the Y, and that would put you right in the center. So now you get a pretty clean mat. If you want to double check it, we'll add a sphere for in our window. And a quick sphere. Just for the heck of it, I'm going to make it 100 scale. I'm going to add a scene. Add a camera. Add our scanline renderer. Plug our camera in. Even though I won't be using it. There we go. Once we've updated, you can see we have our nicely mapped HDRI. You know, most of the portions of this, especially when you take some time to clean it up, coming out of this ball have been pretty good for reprojection. But for now, for what our purposes are going to be, I think this is going to work just fine. We're going to go ahead and add our right node. And we want to obviously add this before we go burning it down into our scene. We'll be writing this out. That was just to double check it. Go into our project folder from graphics. Oh, where you want this, Dave? Go to PSD.
Put it in my text folder, Cinema 4D text.
Okay, sounds good. Oops.
And what are you writing me? EXR?
Yeah.
And do an HDR file too.
Okay.
I've never actually tried to put an EXR as a texture like that, so we'll see what happens.
All right. Exterior merged. HDRI. VO1. .exr for now. Save. We want to write that out in linear space. We're going to be in 32-bit because we're already there. Why not? And everything else looks good. So we'll render that out 1-to-1. And now that that's done, we're going to write out a second version as well, which is a .hdr. We also want that in linear space. Render. And should be good to go. We'll send those over to Dave and do some relighting. Hope you guys enjoyed this little intro into Nuke, and we'll try to get some more in here. Some more advanced things. Have some fun with it.
Now it's Dave's time to shine.
All right, everybody. See you soon. Thanks.
All right, so now it's time for me to make something with the HDRI, the EXR, or the HDR photo that Joe put together. And the first thing that I'm going to show you, I've got a bottle here that I'm going to use for an example, but I'm going to start off with kind of nothing so you can see how to do this from the get-go. And I'm just going to put a sphere in the scene. And what else do I want here? I want a sky. Then I'm going to create a new texture, and that new texture, I'm going to turn off my color and my reflectance. This has nothing turned on. I'm going to turn on luminance. So under luminance, I'm going to hit the button there, and I'm going to load up one of these that Joe made. I'm going to do the EXR for this example. looks very flat in the icon, but it doesn't look like that when you render it. I'm going to drag that texture onto the sky, and I like to use the Alt or Option R to kind of see a rough render of what I'm working with. Kind of navigate around here and see what we're doing. All right, so that's on the sky, and we want it to reflect. And the way we go about doing that is I'm going to make a new texture. I'm going to drag it onto my sphere. This texture we're going to turn on, well, we already have reflectance on, but we're going to add a Beckman reflection onto it. And what will happen is if we look at the ball, you can see the reflections here. Now, right now we're only doing reflections, we're not doing lighting. So if you wanted to light your scene, you would actually do something like turn on GI. I have the physical renderer on right now, by the way. I'm turning on global illumination here, and you can see here I also have a secondary method of radiosity maps set up. And I turned up my gammas just a little bit as well. If we take just a regular blank texture and we put it on the sphere for a second, you can see here renders out. These are this is the lighting, this is the coloring that something plain, like a plain ball in that scene would actually look like. If we go around to different parts of it, it actually looks slightly different colors, it looks slightly different luminance values, because it's using that sky to actually light this ball. Now, if I want to add a Beckman to this texture that I'm on right now, and then just kind of back it off a little bit, you can kind of see the combination of what's going on here. And to give you a better idea, because there's nothing to really reflect or have shadows, let's put a plane in here. This is going to be huge. I'm going to scale it down a little bit. So we can kind of, we'll watch it intersect here. I guess I did a cube by accident. We'll watch it intersect here. You can see what's going on. You can see kind of the color from the scene hitting this. That's how you light the scene with your HDRI photo. And then all the reflections are super clean. And that's, you know, unlike the one that I did a while back, because this one has been, you know, crafted to be high res, high detail from the beginning. Let me delete this texture here. So we have that mirror back on here. So you see what it looks like. So let's do this with something that's actually a little more practical, a little more real world. I'm going to leave the sky in and delete all of this stuff. If you want to see, by the way, if you want to see this background better, if you click on your texture and you go to editor and you go to texture preview size, you can select a preview size. Now, you don't want to bring this up too high because this is actually using memory, but I usually go about 4, you know, and then bring it up to like 16 if I need to, just so I can really see what I'm doing. It just looks better in the viewport. Now, I have a bottle that I made last week. It's a tank array bottle, and I'm going to put it in the scene so that we can play with it a little bit. Now, I kind of already showed you, you know, the GI and how you light something, basically. But just for time purposes, because this is, you know, GI takes forever, I'm going to turn off global illumination because mainly I'm talking about reflections right now. So if I turn on my lower res preview here, so we kind of speed this up a little bit, you can see what's going on. You can see the reflections from the gazebo hitting the cap here. You can see it coming through the bottle and refracting through the bottle. I've actually got a hollow bottle, and then I have some gin inside of that. So you can see what's going on here. If I go in to the cap a little bit more, you can see all of that. And if I turn off the sky, you can see the difference there. None of that is reflecting anymore. That's really all there is to that. Now, what I wanted to do on top of this is go to an Octane version of this bottle because I've textured this for Octane, and this is going to give you a better idea of what an HDRI actually does when you're done with it as far as lighting and as far as reflection and refraction, because it's more of a real-time scenario. If I open the Octane dialog, and the first thing I'm going to do, I've got an environment tag on here, and it's just set up to something else, but I'm going to load up Joe's file here instead, and I'm going to let that come in, and then I'm going to power up my render engine here. This will let us see more in real time what this is actually doing, because it's kind of hard to see when you're working, you know, one short or one long render at a time. Now this is a lot better example, and you can see it looks a lot more realistic, especially with that EXR. There's so much good information in here that we can be using. I'm going to bring up the power a little bit, power of the environment, just so you can see it a little bit better here. And that's what I was talking about earlier when it comes to lighting. You know, sometimes you've got to enhance, you've got to brighten things up. And if we rotate around this in real time, you can see how all the refractions from the real world are here. If you were trying to light this just by itself and you were just using like a white background, or you were using lights, you wouldn't get all of this reflection, refraction that looks so nice. Even when it comes to like the cap, if I come in here, you can really see what's going on with this bump mapping. I have multiple layers, blurry reflections and bump maps and roughness going on, and I have so much stuff going on in here. It's pretty ridiculous. If I move down here, you can see the same thing going on with the label and with the glass. And I'm going to do a little something here with the environment. I can actually change the rotation of the environment and show you what it does. And this is nice to have too if you're working with HDRI and you're trying to make something look nice. You rotate your roll around, your sky around, and get it just right. You know, like if I were doing this for commercial purposes or something and I had it right here, I'd see, oh, there's too much specular going on right here, and I can either bring down my specular, or if I want to actually change my rotation so you can read it better, I could just do that right here. But I felt like this is a lot better example of how this works, because you're seeing this more in real time. You may not have Octane, but at least it helps to visualize. And this is really cool. You bring it all the way down here. Look how dark that gets. But anyway, if you are working on your own project and you're trying to do any sort of visual effects, you're trying to match something, this is definitely the way to go if you want to take it a step further than using something like Photosynth. So I hope you enjoyed our first Nuke tutorial. I'm Dave Koss, and I hope that everybody watching who's going to be at NAB comes and finds me, comes and finds Matt. We're going to be hanging out probably around the Maxon booth most of the time, geeking out and checking out some of the latest stuff and watching some of the awesome speakers and stuff like that. And I guess if anybody wants to get in touch with us for NAB, just get on Facebook or Twitter. We'll find you. We're going to be checking all of our feeds during that time. And that about wraps it up. If you like the nukeness going on here, please let us know, because we really want to get something ramping up with Nuke, especially in like the beginner category. This is probably a little harder to follow if you've never used Nuke before. So we want to do some stuff that kind of introduces people to the layout and how to get around, what the shortcut keys are, all that kind of stuff. So until next time, have a good one. Later, bros. It's pretty good, I guess.